welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers movie masterpiece MPM-13 Decepticon Blackout with Scorponok. This figure's being released in order to coincide with the upcoming 15th anniversary of the original 2007 live-action Transformers movie, and I really couldn't think of a better character to choose from. Blackout was actually the first Transformer that we ever saw on screen, and even to this date created for one of the best CG sequences where he single-handedly annihilates that military base. Now, when this guy was originally unveiled, I'll be honest and say I really wasn't that well impressed. The Studio Series version definitely did set the bar incredibly high, and I was left wondering how would this masterpiece improve upon that. Well, it absolutely has, and all I can say is that I'm so ready to eat my previous words, as this guy could just be our best movie masterpiece figure to date. Now, as we take a closer look here at the details, as far as that head sculpt is concerned, it looks remarkable. One of the biggest improvements you'll see when in comparison to the Studio Series release is just the attention to detail is on point, especially where the paint apps are concerned. So here for the head, we've got a lovely mix of matte grey, metallic gunmetal, red there for the eyes, and even some yellow accents here at the top of the brows. Really looking awesome, and that sculpt work is just so nicely done. And if anything, kind of reminds me of the Decepticon insignia. Now, as we come up here to this top section, this also has been sculpted and painted impeccably well. One thing you'll notice is that for the most part, all of these grey areas have been coated in a very nice metallic silver wash, just to accentuate some of the sharper details, and overall, I think it's turned out great. You can see some nice copper highlights here. I think as far as this front turbine piece is concerned, it looks really nicely done with a mixture of gunmetal as well as metallic silver highlights, and once more you can see that matte finish here at the front. These sections have also been sculpted and painted very nicely, and even as we take a look at the back section of Blackout, this piece, despite it not being painted, has been completely sculpted. Just such a nice amount of attention to detail has been packed into this guy. You can see these massive pieces here on the side, completely painted as well as sculpted, looking really awesome. And the chest has got to be by far one of the biggest improvements when in comparison to that leader figure. This just looks so much more accurate to the movie. The design is a lot bigger, a lot broader, and slightly more complex. I think that dry brushing looks awesome, and there is in fact actually quite a lot of engineering packed into this piece alone, which I'll be sure to touch base with during transformation. As we take a look at it here from a side perspective, you can see some really nice details. Once again, very accurate to how this actual copter appeared in the movie. Even as we take a look at this side, more very nice details, and I love the yellow trim that we've got around the side window, as well as the subtle green highlighting here for this top section. Overall, as far as this region is concerned, it looks amazing. You can even see the fuel rod, which has been sculpted very nicely to match its appearance from the movie, and the arms are just incredible, not only in terms of articulation, but the design is amazing. We've got loads of mechanical detail, but the forearms are just incredible. They've literally been able to abolish all of that excess kibble that was seen on the Studio Series version, and have created for one of the most intricate and complex arm designs that we've ever seen for the Masterpiece line. You can see how we've got this crumpled section, really does look as if though it's transformed much like in the movie. We've got the USAF logo slapped there on the side. The forearm detail looks impeccable, painted so nicely, and the same can also be said here for the back. You can see the intricacy where those hydraulics and pistons are concerned, even that copper wire. Overall, just looking so nicely done. And one of the biggest geek outs for me is that in the movie, when Blackout actually grabs the server, they've managed to perfectly replicate the design as well as the paint here for the back of the hand. That just looks immaculate. We've got the nose step, that matte grey finish looks awesome, mixed with some of that gunmetal. Overall, such an incredible hand sculpt. It really does look as if though it's about to download some deep dark secrets from that military base. Now, as we come around here to this front section, this looks so much nicer when in comparison to some of those official shots. This actually transforms. You can see a nice dry brushing effect here at the top, and as we just lift this up, you can also see the same for this section. But as we take a look at the legs, arguably one of the most complex leg designs that we ever saw from those Michael Bay movies, I think they've knocked it out of the park. We've got some nice chain detailing here at the top. As far as the thighs are concerned, much like I mentioned previously, we've got this really nice metallic silver dry brushing applied over the top. As we take a look at the inside of the leg, Some very nice sculpt work, and originally I absolutely bashed these sections. However, I am proven to be wrong. These are completely accurate to the movie and really are just a tell sign of how much thought the design team packed into this guy. These look basically identical to the CG design. I think that sculpt work looks fantastic, as so does the paintwork. And as we just take a look here at the legs from a front perspective, here we have the shin guards, which are actually die cast, and there is some die cast here at the base of the foot just to add some weight here at the lower section, as he does have quite a big broad upper torso. You can see here for the side of the leg, completely decked out with some amazing sculpt work, as well as once again some really nice metallic silver and copper highlights. Just in all, such a fantastic looking sculpt. Now, if I were to be critical, I do wish that perhaps the toes could split slightly further apart, but considering they're die cast, I can understand as to why maybe that was in fact impossible. And as we flip here to the base, unlike the SS version, there are no details of which can become scratch. You can definitely plonk this guy on the ground, have him fighting alongside some of the other Autobots and Decepticons, and you really don't have to worry about scuffing up any of those details, which also is a really nice touch. And as we just spin our attention here to the back where the propeller is housed, you can see that the entire back section looks really nicely done. A mixture of a dark gunmetal plastic as well as that lighter plastic, loads of different nuts and bolts, and despite this guy being one coherent piece, he doesn't parts form at all. I really don't think that backpack looks too bad by any stretch of the imagination, and the entire underside of the helicopter is filled out by loads of panels, so it really is just extraordinary how much engineering they've put into this figure. Truly a masterpiece, if I'm going to be honest. This really is a fantastic MPM figure, and like I said before, I really do think one of the best. Now, as far as articulation is concerned, this is where you're going to see one of the biggest improvements when in comparison to the Studio Series release. So here for the head, it is on a ball joint, so it can be hinged all the way down, which looks fantastic, as well as up. You can also rotate it left to right, as well as tilt it side to side, so definitely a very dynamic range where this is concerned. The shoulders are on ratchet joints, so they can ratchet forwards that far. However, you can actually take this shoulder pad section, disengage this to allow for a much greater range of motion. So once again, I thought that was a really nice touch, and then this will just simply lock there back into place. We also do get a hinge joint out to the side, full rotation here at the bicep, as well as a ratchet joint here at the elbow, which can also bend roughly to 90. And as far as the hands are concerned, these can pivot forwards, backwards, rotate the full 360, and each of the fingers are indeed individually articulated. So this one can hinge independently, as so can the index finger, and the thumb also can be compressed. So an amazing range where that's concerned. As we come now down here to the waist, this has got to be one of the biggest improvements. As we lift this section up, Blackout actually surprisingly has a completely unhindered full rotation here, which is just absolutely incredible. It really does allow you to recreate some of those awesome poses that we saw in some of those original character posters, and I just think that is so nicely done. Definitely a marked improvement. As we come here to the hips, these can ratchet forwards that far, as well as back to about that far before they are slightly hindered due to the nature of the design. They can also kick out to the sides. Sadly, the ratchet joints do have a tendency to give in. If you do find that sweet spot, they will hold their place, but if you do just shake it, sadly, they will drop down. But surprisingly, when actually posing, it hasn't become that much of an issue. We do get a full rotation here at the thigh, a ratchet joint at this top section, where I presume the beginning of the knee is, and then a second ratchet joint at this lower part, so you can definitely chicken these sections here to your own preference. And then here for the foot, these can ratchet forwards, backwards, as well as rock side to side. So overall, articulation wise, I really do think this figure here is for the most part pretty top notch. And as far as the hands, the shoulders, and the waist are concerned, such an improvement when in comparison to what we saw from that Studio Series leader. Now, another area of which was in a much needed improvement when in comparison to the Studio Series version would be in regards to firepower, and I think it's safe to say that this Blackout is definitely packing. Now, one of the biggest and best accessories that this guy includes for me has got to be the spinning propeller blade. This was something that for the most part was absent with the Studio Series version, and I just think this looks awesome. This was actually his signature weapon in the movie, and you can see kind of this front section is almost identical to the piece that we've got here behind Blackout's head. I think the sculpt and paintwork looks very nicely done, and all of the rotors do in fact actually rotate. So overall, definitely a really cool weapon, and something which is even cooler is that this will integrate into the propeller for transformation, something which I was just not expecting at all. Now, as far as its installation is concerned, as we just take a look here at the back of Blackout's hand, there is a port that this section will simply just peg into, and you can definitely have this guy mincing and slicing away at some Autobots or humans. So overall, that definitely is really cool to see. We also do get included 2 miniguns. I only have one on my person at this time, but he will come with 2, and you can see the sculpt work looks very nicely done even here towards the front and the side. Sadly, it doesn't rotate, and it would have been awesome had it done that, but nevertheless, for those of you who don't wish to store it on the arm, you can actually peg it into the side of the leg here. So you can see there is a slot that this will just snap into, so you can display both of them on either of the legs. But of course, if you're like me, you're going to want to have your Blackout equipped with as much firepower as possible, so it will just tab in to this slot here, and that is Blackout with that machine gun, once again looking awesome. And an accessory of which I wasn't that keen on when it was first shown would be the inclusion here of these blast effects. Now, having them in hand, is my opinion changed? No, I really don't like these, but as far as the sculpt work is concerned, they look pretty decent. You can see how this kind of looks like a missile barge, some very nice looking sculpt work. You can peg this here into the minigun, which I think looks pretty cool, but it's definitely not something I'll be displaying on the shelf. And then we do get this much larger one, which can be used for a hidden weapon. Now, for those of you who recall when Blackout is absolutely decimating that military base, he does deploy a kind of a sentry gun from the mid-torso, and that is exactly what the design team have implemented into this guy. So as we just take this piece, it can be a little tough to poke out. We can slide this section down, and there you have that sentry gun as seen in the first live action movie. Now, the sculpt work isn't the best, but it definitely does resemble what we saw on screen, and you can take either of the blast effects and just peg it into this section like so, and really have him looking like a force to be reckoned with. So as far as firepower is concerned, I definitely think they've knocked it out of the park. Now, the final accessory that this guy includes is more or less his own independent character, that being the inclusion of Decepticon Scorpenoc. Now, considering that we never saw Frenzy with Barricade, I really wasn't expecting to see this guy packaged in with Blackout, and I am so glad that they did go the extra mile, as overall I think this figure looks fantastic. Even in its own right, it really is an amazing looking piece. As we just take a look here at the detailing for the head, it's been painted so nicely. You can see kind of those grooves in the eyes, which I thought was a really nice touch. And as we take a look here at the main body, you can see for the most part completely painted. We've kind of got that turbine section in the middle. I think the claws look awesome, as so do the legs, and even the sculpt work here for the sting is pretty nicely done. As we flip here to the underside, you can see the belly has been completely made out of die-cast, which I think looks great. And as far as articulation is concerned, the head can rotate left to right, as well as hinge up and down. We also do get a rotation here at the shoulder, a hinge joint at the shoulder, as well as the elbow, so it really does allow you to kind of put these pincers in any pose that you want. And despite the legs for the most part being conjoined, they are attached via a singular ball joint, which does allow you to kind of rotate these around to have him in a slightly more upright position. And here for this back section, this too is on a hinge joint. We do get various different hinge joints for the tail, as well as finally a ball joint. So overall, just as its own individual character, definitely one of the best looking Scorpenocs that we've seen for a very long time. Now, of course, you'll recall that he does actually fire out of the back of Blackout in the movie, and that is exactly how you can store him here for robot mode. So on the underside, we do have a slot that will peg here into this tab, so we can just snap Scorpenoc in there just like so, and that is how he will store for robot mode. And then if you wish to deploy him, you can simply just detach him and have him try and take down some of those military soldiers. Now, turning to some comparisons, we'll kickstart with arguably the most important, that being comparing MPM-13 alongside the Studio Series leader counterpart, and that Studio Series version is still fantastic. For a budget mainline release, it is amazing, and it's probably one of the best Studio Series entries that we've seen so far. And what the design team appear to have done is taken that original leader as a basis and have just improved upon him as a whole. You can certainly see refinements made, especially where the mid-torso is concerned. The forearms and even the legs are a lot more movie accurate on our MPM when in comparison to the Studio Series version. And one thing that you won't be able to appreciate until we actually get them both transformed into the helicopter mode is just how much additional components the MPM is carrying. The entire underside of the helicopter is completely filled out on the masterpiece when it comparison to the hollow nature that we saw on the Studio Series version. And just to showcase how they look from a back perspective, you can see that despite the additional components, I'd actually say that the MPM is slightly more refined where that back kibble is concerned compared to the Studio Series release. So overall, I definitely think the Masterpiece is the best transforming version of Blackout that we've ever seen. Here we have Masterpiece Blackout compared alongside the MPM Megatron. Now, of course, this scale is going to differ depending on how chicken-legged you actually have Blackout, but I think the scale is pretty decent. Personally, before I actually took a look at some scale charts, I was always under the impression that Blackout was the biggest Decepticon from that 2007 movie, but no, Megatron was in fact the largest, so I do think that the scale between Blackout and Megatron would be more or less what we actually saw on screen. And to go back to my earlier point, you can of course increase and boost Blackout's height depending on how crumpled or how straightened you want those legs. Here we have the MPM Starscream, MPM-13 Bumblebee, Movie Masterpiece Barricade, Optimus Prime, the third-party Wei Zhang Hide Shadow, and if I'm going to be honest, I still think the Movie Masterpiece is the best, not only in terms of detail, but in terms of the engineering. The way that the Masterpiece transforms, it allows the figure to stay in one complete piece, whereas with Wei Zhang, you basically have to remove the entirety of the backpack to get the robot mode looking this great, and of course, it was basically just an upscale and slightly improved version of the SS, so still has all of the issues that that version had, such as the inaccurate look for the arms, and of course the chest, which doesn't look nowhere near as good in my opinion as what we're seeing here with the Masterpiece. And finally we have the Masterpiece compared alongside a Studio Series Voyager class Optimus Prime, just for those of you wondering as to how he would look if maybe you want him as a stand-in for your Grindor. I think this is pretty much on point to what we saw in that forest battle. And comparing the Masterpiece Scorpenoc to that of the Studio Series version, you can see that despite them surprisingly both being pretty much exactly the same size as one another, the detail and the paint is leaps and bounds better on the new MPM version, and the way that you can actually orientate the legs does allow you to get Scorpenoc into a slightly more upright position, which in my opinion perfectly captures how he was kind of crawling around in the movie. But yeah, definitely, especially when we take a look here at those faces, the MPM version is so much nicer, and just the articulation in general is a lot better. So, with everything just about wrapped up here for robot mode, let's delve into the transformation. So to kick things off, you're going to want to bring back in this rotor blade, take this section, pop this cap up, and rotate this here all the way around, and just snap that there into place, as this will actually become the top section of the main rotor when in helicopter mode, which personally I thought was a great use of utilizing some of those accessories. Really nice engineering. We can then come now here to Blackout himself, and I'd say the biggest issue I have with the transformation is just how enormous he is. He is a big piece, so it can take quite a bit of getting used to, just maneuvering certain pieces out of the way in order to work on a specific area. But to begin with, you're going to want to collapse that fuel rod in. What I would then recommend doing would be to straighten the legs out and do the same here for this side. You'll now want to take this panel and here on this side, fold this out and then disengage this section, just straighten this out, rotate this here all the way around until it does come to the front. We can then rotate at the thigh, take the heel spurs, flip these sections up, and flip the front toe up, which will allow us to rotate this piece here all the way around, and then take the landing gear and just hinge that like so. What we can then do is compress this here all the way up just like this, ensure that that is completely straightened out, and then take this panel, snap that in there, and then snap that in there just like so. As we flip to this side, you want to hinge this section out, take this piece and just detach it, bring this up and over so that you're left with something which looks along the lines of this. Now this tab will actually slide into this slot, so just snap that in there and rinse and repeat the exact same process here for this side. So hinge this section here out to the side. You'll then want to detach this piece, rotate this here all the way around, take the knee pad, just snap that there into place, rotate just like so. Come here to the heel spurs, kick those upwards, as well as the front toe. Rotate this section around, take the landing gear, fold this out, and then just ratchet all of this here into place. Take this section, snap that down, fold this piece down, and then hinge this out, and then hinge this section up and over on this double joint. And as mentioned previously, this tab will slide into a slot on the underside, and those are basically the legs fully transformed. What we can then do is combine the two halves, so just snap all of this there into place, creating the back section of the underside of the helicopter. I would then recommend to turn our attention here now to the top, and the biggest annoyance, at least in my opinion, would be this propeller blade. So just rotate this around and get a good grip of that. We can then take these panels, hinge these here out to the sides, and repeat the same process. Detach these sections and hinge these up, which will then allow us to take this entire lower section and drop this down. Now inside here, there is a catch which is holding this main propeller blade into the back section of the robot mode. You're going to want to unhook this, fold this section in, and that will then allow us to rotate and hinge all of this up just like so. Now take these pieces, flip those up as well, and you'll notice that we've got some circular ports that these pegs will actually tab into. So just shoot this down, align this up appropriately. Moving up here to the top section, as this guy is definitely getting pretty big, you're going to want to take this piece and just detach this like so, and then this entire section will straighten out and will rotate all the way around so that the front is now facing the back. Now as I just ratchet this down, what you'll be able to do here is take the tail rotor blade, which is actually engineered into the transformation unlike the Studio Series version, and now here on the underside you can see two slots that these two tabs will peg into. So arch this section down until that does snap there into place. Just make sure that everything does stay tabbed in so that you're left with something along the lines of this. Now what you can do is come around here to the front and, much like the Studio Series version, detach this entire assembly away from the body. Hinge this up. That will then allow us to take these sections and just collapse them in upon themselves, hinge this section out and rotate all the way around so that the front is now facing the back. What I would then recommend doing would be to take the hip joints and ratchet these here all the way down, just like so. And now as we turn our attention to the inside, you'll notice how we do have a square tab that will actually peg into this slot. So you'll just want to take this here and shoot that all the way in until it actually really securely locks into place. You'll hear a massive snap, and believe me, that is not going anywhere unless you want it to. What we can then do is flip here to the underside, and you'll want to make sure that this section also does go inside. So just snap that in there securely, and then now these panels will come up and over, and then this section here will flip out just like this, and then it is just a matter of overlapping these here on top of one another. So there we have effectively the entire underside of Blackout fully transformed. You'll then want to flip back up now here to the top and begin work on this section. Now from this point onwards, things are actually pretty straightforward. So make sure that these tabs that we discussed earlier on do stay locked into place. You'll then want to bring these sections down just like so, rotate these up, and much like the Studio Series version, these here will snap into place, and repeat the same process here for this side. So snap those in there, and then we can just align these side panels up with one another. So just making sure that everything does stay secure. Take this section, overlap there, and then come to this side and rinse and repeat until that does snap in. So it definitely can take quite a bit of force to get a few of these components locked into place. So right now we should be left with something which looks along the lines of this. Now you'll want to come here to the arms, and surprisingly these are actually pretty straightforward. You're going to want to take this section here, hinge this out, and then slide this all the way down. We can then take this back section, disengage this section here, and just fold all of that out. And now what you'll want to do is take the shoulder, detach it from the body, take this locking mechanism, snap that there into place, hinge these sections down, and as far as the transformation for the arms is concerned, you'll want to flip here to the panels at the back, fold this out, straighten out the fingers, rotate this section around, and just snap that there into place. That will then come over the top. You'll then want to rotate here, take this, fold this section down, and then as far as these are concerned, you'll want to rotate this out, and then bring this up. And here we have a circular tab that will peg into this port. So just snap that in there. We can then fold this section up, take this piece, hinge this up, and now this section will come up and over the top, and we'll just lock all of that there into place. Then you'll just take this here and snap this into the side of the helicopter. And as we come to the underside, take this panel and just snap that there into place. Spin your attention to this side and repeat the exact same process. So disengage this, snap this section down, take this piece and just compress it so that it is now sitting flush with this section. We can then take this section here, hinge this all the way out, rotate out the arm, fold down these panels, fold down this one, rotate the wrist into that hollow cavity, then take this here, fold this out, and up. Just like this. Take this panel, hinge this up, and as mentioned previously, there is a port that will slide there into that tab. And then for some finishing touches, this will come up and over the top and will lock there into place. So we can then just snap this in here. And then take this and snap that there into place. Now, as we come here to the front section of Blackout, you want to take this, hinge this section down, and surprisingly, if we just shoot these back to allow for some additional clearance, these sections will actually extend up and over. Now for helicopter mode, in order to kind of lock them into place and stop them compressing, you have to tilt these windows up, whereas for copter mode, you'll actually want to ever so slightly just hinge these down. It is that minimal range of motion which really does make all of the difference to the transformation. We can then take this, extend this section here forwards, pull this out, take the head, much like the Studio Series version, and just drop that down. As we flip here to the underside, hinge this up, and these will just snap into place like so. What you'll then want to do is just get these sections here out of the way, take this piece, extend this up and over until we're left with something along the lines of this, and now we can just squish all of this here into place until it does snap securely. We can then take these sections and just lock those there into place, and for some finishing touches, take this piece and just shoot this here over the top, which will keep these side panels from becoming detached. Now, as we just rest this down, we can then overlap these sections until they do snap into place. Take these pieces here, bring these around, and repeat the same process for this side. Snap them there into place, take these sections, shift these to the back. As we turn our attention to the tail rotor, you want to split this until it clicks into place. Fold out this section, flip this section here from the underside, split the rotor blade so that you're left with something along the lines of this. Ensure that this landing gear is also clicked into place. And now is where we can bring back in this rotor weapon, and this will snap into the top, and then it is just a matter of snapping the blades into these sections. So just go all the way around, snap them there into place, and there we have the MPM-13 Blackout fully transformed up into his really awesome helicopter alt mode. And this thing is massive, as you would expect from that enormous robot mode. Blackout definitely does become an incredibly mighty piece here in the helicopter mode, and overall I think it looks equally as impressive. Now this is a fully licensed Sikorsky helicopter, so it looks almost identical to the actual helicopter as seen in the 2007 movie, and overall I think they've knocked it out of the park, especially in regards to the minute details and the underside, which we'll be sure to touch base with in just a second. As we bring it in here for a closer look, you can see all of the various different nuts and bolts actually sculpted into these side panels, with all of the windows individually painted, which I thought was a really nice touch. Even here for these side sections, you can see some nice gunmetal grey as well as yellow and red for these kind of indicator lights. We've got the United States Air Force logo here along the side, and the tail rotor looks fantastic. We've got Blackout there with some nice red and white pinstriping, and of course 4500X, which was the helicopter that Blackout obtained in that 07 movie. We've got no handhold, danger, keep away, and as we spin our attention here to the front, this looks awesome. More of the same details that we saw in robot mode, but you really are able to appreciate them when in the copter. We've got the yellow pinstriping around the side window, rescue, as well as more minute details which look fantastic. Of course, we've got that fuel rod here at the front, the Decepticon insignia, along with yet again another 4500X stamp. And as we just flip to this side, it is asymmetrical, so we have some nicer details, which I think have turned out really, really well done. And here for the top, much like in bot mode, some very nice paint, and just overall the sculpt work is fantastic. Now as we flip to the underside, this has got to be the biggest improvement when in comparison to the Studio Series version. It is completely filled out and looks awesome, and it has also actually been sculpted very nicely. Much like the sides, you can really see all of the various different nuts and bolts. I think it comes together impeccably well, and unlike the Wei Zhang hide shadow, this is fully integrated into the transformation. And as you guys saw, there were really no obvious excess components in that bot mode. The fact that they've been able to actually store them away so nicely just goes to show how much engineering has been packed into this figure. Overall, I think it is absolutely smashing. Now you can also open the hatch on this version, so as we just disengage a few of the tabs, we can fully drop this down, which I thought was a really nice touch, and store Scorponok away. So you can see that we've got this massive peg here as well as two slots. That is going to peg into this slot, and then the tabs that we've got on the claws will slide into the top. So just to showcase how that looks, you do just want to peg him in there, snap that section into place, and there we have Scorponok in that opening hatch, which I thought was such a nice touch. And of course we can just store him away, and he does in fact actually go in there really, really seamlessly. So overall, as far as the helicopter is concerned, I think it's great. The propeller can spin super freely, as so can the tail rotor blade. And something else which is an improvement over the Studio Series version is that the wheels now in fact actually roll. Sadly, you can't stow away the landing gear. It is constantly deployed, but in the grand scheme of things, that's definitely a minor critique. Now we can bring in the miniguns, and these will attach onto either side of the helicopter, so we can just snap that in there. And overall, a very impressive looking piece. Now turning to a quick comparison, here we have the MPM-13 compared alongside the Studio Series Leader Class Blackout, and I first of all must apologise for the rather bizarre camera angle for this shot. Sadly, both of them are enormous and wouldn't fit in my review station in the typical way that your standard deluxe Voyagers and Leaders would, but you can see that the Studio Series version, much like in robot mode, is dwarfed by our new MPM. And just to showcase my earlier point, if you actually flip the Studio Series version here to the underside, you can see that basically the entirety of the robot mode was visible, whereas on our MPM they've been able to completely conceal that, which once again I just think makes the masterpiece the best version of Blackout that we've ever seen. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers MPM-13, Decepticon Blackout, and Scorponok. Overall, I think this is a fantastic entry into the MPM line. It may just be the best that we've seen so far. As far as the robot mode goes, it looks fantastic. Much like the Studio Series version, very faithful to how it appeared in the movie, yet with the significantly higher budget, it really does allow them to refine the details and just the overall design of the character in general, making this undeniably one of the best looking transformable Blackouts guts that we've ever seen. Articulation, I also think, is a massive positive for this guy. He actually has a waist joint, which, considering just how complex that bot mode design is pretty astonishing. I think the arms look leaps and bounds better when in comparison to the Studio Series version. He has some diecast, which adds a great sense of weight to the lower section, meaning that you are able to pull off some of those slightly more dynamic poses. As far as accessories goes, this guy's got everything. He's got the miniguns, he's got that massive rotor blade, which was something that was sadly missing on our Studio Series counterpart, and the included Scorponok truly is just the icing on the cake. That guy looks great for how small he is, and it's awesome that much like Blackout, he also does have some diecast. As far as the transformation goes, actually not that complex. Of course it's intricate, but I really don't think it's super frustrating, unlike some of those third-party alternatives, and it results in an amazing helicopter, which, much like its robot mode, truly does capture the appearance as seen in the movie. And something else which continues to blow my mind is that, unlike the Studio Series version, the entire undercarriage of the copter is completely covered, and then when you have him in robot mode, there really isn't any evident excess vehicle mode components just hanging off. The engineering on this guy really is superb. So overall, for those of you who have been a fan so far of the MPM line, you're a fan of the character of Blackout, especially the design, then I have without any doubt that this is by far one of the best figures that you can pick up this year. And if you're a fan of the Michael Bay movies, then honestly I think this is a must-have. 10 or 12 years ago, had you told me that this thing existed, I would have thought you were crazy, as this for me for the longest time has been a dream item, but it's definitely been worth the wait, and really do think this will go down as being by far one of the best looking Transformers movie figures that we've ever gotten. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you guys think of this MPM-13? Is it one that you plan on adding to the collection? And of course, please feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below in regards to the review. I thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.